there we go. Now let's get to this page over here. And I got one person so far. Thank you. All right, mute. And we're gonna get over here. Okay. All right, hi. All right. Okay, so we got a couple people now. Thank y'all for joining me. I hate when this thing says it has a playback error, and I know that it's working fine. All right. So I'm going to give it a couple more minutes so we can get some more people up in here. Hi, Shy. All right. Some water. Hi, Caitlin. All right. How was everybody's day? It's raining. Just so you guys know, it's raining. I scheduled my CCA for next month. Yay! I'm excited for you. You have to let me know how it goes, obviously, so I can give you a shout out when you pass. So, let's see. So tonight we are talking about self-study for medical coding versus going through a program, right? And so that was a question that was posed last night. So I said it's a great idea for a show. So here we are. Oh, so you've been studying all day? What part are you studying right now, Shy? I just received my Optum 360. Yay! I'm telling you, that thing is amazing. I love Optum 360. I love everything that they have to offer. Everything. All right. Okay. Woohoo! You're answering my questions. It was such a good idea. I was like, well, let me go ahead and talk about that tonight. Since we've been doing studying the last couple of days, we covered how to study the ICD-10 CM coding guidelines. And then last night we did the external causes, which of course was my favorite show. Study the musculoskeletal system. So that's my favorite. I love bone work. The bone work and muscles and all the tendons, that's my favorite. Because injury coding is my favorite. So, but anyway, so let's go ahead and get into it. When you're trying to decide in the beginning which way to go, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of noise, right? When it comes to, go into this program, go into that program. Oh, you want to get into this one and don't worry about this other one. And they're going to train you for this and that. The main thing is when you are trying to decide whether to go self-study or whether to go through a instructor-led, you need to know, if you're going to invest in an instructor-led, you need to know how that instructor is. And the time to ask questions is before you sign on the dotted line, before you get into the program. You want to make sure that you are going to get the best for your dollar, because when you are in these programs, once they have your money, they have your money. So if you haven't done your research about this particular school or this particular instructor, you may be out of luck when it comes to how they're teaching. Because for some people, they're not very good at instructing, and you won't know until you get into the program. Because for some people, they think that, okay, I'm just going to proctor this from a book and the students should be good to go. And it's not that way. Different people learn in different ways. And particularly when it comes to adults learn way differently. And you would think by the time we get out of school, we know how to learn. But if you haven't really enjoyed school as much as some people have, like I enjoyed school, right? But if you didn't enjoy school, it may be a little bit more difficult for you because you don't really know how you learn, right? How is it better for you to learn? Are you a visual learner? Are you an auditory learner? I mean, there's differences in how people learn. You have to learn what is most efficient for you. It is like working out. It is like doing that kind of thing. You have to train, just like you have to train your body when you're exercising, you have to train your mind and your brain when it comes to being educated. So finding a really good instructor and finding a really good program to actually go to is going to be part of the challenge. For some people, they say, well, Blue, I need to apply for financial aid, so I've got to go through the college. And they're training for a HEMA, or they're training for AAPC, or they're training for both. When it comes to brass knuckles, I always tell you guys this same thing. I just got the question, what is the difference between the NHA, AAPC, and a HEMA? For the purposes of this video, we are only going to be talking about a HEMA and AAPC because those are the two that I recommend. These are the ones that employers are looking for, not the NHA. The NHA is something completely different, and it is often, they have a credential that I'm not going to mention here, but they have a credential that is often included in a program. Oh, when you complete this, we'll give you a free voucher so you can go take this certification. If you look in the job listings, you're not going to see employers asking for that credential or that certificate. So that is something that you have to be aware of, because they're going to use, these schools are going to use these sales tactics to try to get you to say, oh, I want to get this credential and that credential and this credential, that credential. These schools are businesses. At the end of the day, they are a business. And I know if I get a thumbs down, it's from a business. Guys, I always tell you, all you need to start in this industry is one credential. As much knowledge as I have, currently, I only have one credential. Why do I only have one credential? Because it did not, it was not important to me. YouTube changed how I look at my profession, right? Because I already had a love for it, but it did change because of you guys. So there's going to be some changes to my name in the future, but not right now. I have only one credential. I went from a CCA, and that got superseded by the CCSP that I currently have. So there is a difference. And when you've been in the industry as long as I have, and you have experience, there is a difference when you're adding multiple credentials. But when you're in the very beginning and you're getting these schools that are trying to force feed you, like, get this credential, that credential, this credential. And when you have an alphabet soup after your name, oh yeah, they're going to hire you quickly. Do you know how many people write me every single week who have this magical alphabet soup and have not been able to get a job? So these promises that are out there, these very expensive promises, guys, that's what I'm telling you. To get into this field, you can self-study. I have a video out that has the whole outline of what I recommend that you guys do, because when I went through school, this was what I remember from going through my program, all the steps that I needed to go through in order to complete it. Because I went to a trade school who said that they had an instructor when they didn't really. It was some creepy guy. He was creepy. I will say that. He was creepy. Even to this day, the thought of that man creeps me out. But he would come in and he would speak about being a medical coder and all the things about medical coding. But he never really gave us a lot of instruction. And he said, oh yeah, you'll learn that in the real world. So that was really bad. And if you are somebody that needs to have somebody explain things to you, that would have put you in a world of hurt, because there was not anybody to explain things to us. We were literally sat in front of a computer and said, here, learn. So, you know, you have to think about, how are you going to learn? If you're going to go to a college, ask around, ask for the professor. And when you ask for the professor, find out what their educational background is. Is their certification valid? Because believe it or not, sometimes these instructors are not even certified. They'll have a degree, but they won't be certified. Or they'll be certified, but their certification has lapsed and they haven't been in the real world coding in years. And I heard about somebody that was like that, hadn't coded in the ICD-10 world, but had been a coder in the ICD-9 world. So there's a huge difference. How can you teach people when you haven't even been in the real world? Well, it's just proctoring from a book. If I'm out there and I'm spending thousands of dollars on an education, I am not going to want somebody who hasn't even been in the real world to instruct me. So that is something that you have to be able to ask in the beginning. And a school who is going to be very transparent about their instructors is going to be cool with you asking questions, and is going to be cool with you looking up the instructor to see what their credentials are, what is their background. So, I decided to go self-study for my CPC. I already, well, see, that's good. There's sometimes when you've had experience and you've been in the field, it does help, but you got to make sure that you know all the specific rules about medical coding, because sometimes when you have experience, it's the finer details that's going to get you on the exam. So just be careful with that. It is possible to learn this on your own. It is possible to study on your own and successfully pass the certification exam. Many people have done it, but it takes a lot of discipline. Now I'm going to talk about actually studying on your own. If you are going to study on your own, if you want to forego all of this mishigas with, it's this school, that school, and we're training you for this best certification, and we're with this association only, and this other association is bad. Don't listen to the trash talk. If they're trash talking, that's another cue for you to get out of there, because a school should not have to bash another association. And especially if they're bashing AHIMA or AAPC, if they're bashing each other, that's ridiculous, because there is not one association, this one is better than the other one. These are both widely accepted and widely recognized all over the world. So that is something that you guys should know. I mean, I hate that. I hate when people get into that, well, AAPC is better or AHIMA is better. Guys, I'm with AHIMA. And I tell you guys all the time, if you want to go with AHIMA or AAPC, by all means. I do not believe in this East Coast, West Coast type deal. It's stupid. I mean, it really is stupid, and it's immature. And I hate it, because the caliber of every single medical coder is different. I have known coders who have their CPC who are very advanced. I have known coders who have their CPC who do not know, and get very lost when it comes to medical coding. So I've seen it, and I've seen it on both sides. I've seen CCSs struggle with coding as well. And I've seen CCSs who can instruct so many people and are really intelligent and brilliant. So it really all depends on the individual themselves. I've never believed in judging somebody based on their credential, but I've always said that if you're going to get certified in medical coding, go with AHIMA or AAPC. And that's just what I'm going to say on that. But when you're getting into studying it by yourself, and you are saying, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you start to lose steam, because it can happen, because there's no one else around you like pushing you, right? You don't have the other students to say, oh yeah, we're going to get through this. It takes a lot of discipline. And I think sometimes the way that I do my channel too is when I'm giving you these motivational speeches and things like that, and I'm telling you guys, yes, you can, yes, you can. I'm doing it for those that are self-studying as well, because it's just like, this is got to be your outlet, right? Something, because when you're looking at doing this on your own, it's a huge feat. But the thing you got to be proud of at the end, when you take your certification and you pass, is that you did it all by yourself. You may have gotten some pointers and guidance about different things that you need to learn, but for the most part, you're doing it all on your own. And people have to think about what is their motivation. And I've always told people that if you're studying by yourself, think about your motivation. What is your motivation? For some people, their motivation is, I work minimum wage, Bloom. I'm tired of it. I did get a letter from a lady. She's like, I want a nice house. I want a nice car. I want to be able to buy clothes. I want to be able to buy jewelry. I want to go out to eat. I want to take vacations. And I can't do that making minimum wage. I need to do something else. That was her driver. That was her get up and go. So in those moments when she felt like I'm so tired. I don't want to do this. I don't understand this. I'm going to throw in the towel. When she had those thoughts, she immediately started to think about the reasons why she wanted to do it. And whatever your reasons why, whether it is that you want to take a vacation, when I delivered phone books, we did go on vacations because we made really good money delivering phone books, but phone books went out because of cell phones and all this other good stuff. But it's nice. And when I first started, of course, I was going through a divorce, and so I didn't have a lot of money. But now that I've been in medical coding, I'm able to take vacations, like actual vacations, and go places and things like that. I've been to Vegas. And I don't go to Vegas just to go to gambling. I go for the travel part of it. I go and I see shows and I go do things. And it's something that I know that I can comfortably afford to do. And I've not just gone to Vegas, I've gone to different places. And just being able to have experiences is just something so rewarding about that, especially when you work in something like this field and it is so mentally, like, it challenges you every single day and you have to learn a lot. And so to be able to get rewarded by being able to do things freely is amazing, so you really have to dig deep when you're having those moments of, I can't do this. Get on that path. That's why I tell you guys, if you stay on that order, and I break down in that video, and I'll link it in the description box when I get done with this. If you go in the order, it'll take you a year. You can shorten it to 9 months. You can shorten it less than that. I don't recommend it, because if you're going too fast, it's not going to help you when you get out in the real world, and you need to be prepared. So that's the thing that I recommend for people, is if you're going to learn it right and take your time learning it. Don't rush, because I've heard of these 4-month programs. Oh yeah, you'll be able to learn in 4 months, in 16 weeks, how to become a medical coder. Those same people that get out into the real world are struggling. And then they wonder why people don't want to hire brand new medical coders, because you're literally having to teach somebody from scratch when they should already come in knowing the basic fundamentals of how to code, because they passed the certification. So that's why these employers are expecting people to know what they're doing. But when you have a bunch of people who have been through really short programs and they want to get into this because they want to make the money, and that's the reason why they're there, and they don't really quite get it, it's very frustrating for them. And they're like, oh, this is a scam and it's not worth it. And it is worth it. But if you're not being told the full truth when you're getting into these programs, that's the whole thing about it. But having discipline is going to go a long way, guys. You have to have discipline when it comes to studying by yourself and going through the books. And the books that I recommend in there, they're workbooks. So you can go through and look at them and go through the actual questions in the book itself. I was being asked the other day, like, how do you study out of a book? Well, I'm going to do like a whole video about it by itself. But just so you guys know, I always recommend going to the questions at the end and reading the questions, so that first, before you start reading the chapter, so you know what to look for as you're reading the chapter. You're already going to have an idea because you already know the questions it's going to ask. So that's why I tell you guys, set yourself up for success. Because for me, when you start at the end and you know the end of the story, and then you go and you start reading the story from the beginning, you're already going to know what the outcome is. So having that forehand knowledge is going to help you, because then you're going to know, okay, well, when I read this particular passage, oh, they were asking about that. So that's a good way when you're studying on your own to set yourself up for success that way, because then you're going to start getting these answers correct because you already know what questions they're going to ask. Oh, thank you, Ashley. I love you too. But, when you are going through there and you are working with flashcards, and a lot of people will always argue with me about flashcards. It's inevitable. Every single time I mention flashcards and doing flashcards, I get 1 or 2 emails. I hate flashcards. I am never doing flashcards. Or I will buy flashcards. The more you engage your mind and your body into studying, the more it's going to sink in. That's why they tell you when you are, I don't know why people call me, why do you call me in the middle of a show? So anyway, so when you're studying, right, and you start writing out flashcards, it's going to be a lot more quicker to commit to memory. Because when you start committing things to memory is when it's going to be a lot easier. When you start looking at these questions and these final exam prep books, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I remember from this part when I was studying, this is what they're talking about. Don't rely on those exam prep books to be what is actually on the test. I have to tell people this because I have gotten many emails from upset people that say, I got this exam prep book and I spent hundreds of dollars on it, and none of those questions were on the exam. They're not supposed to be. Because if they were, then it would be so easy for everyone to pass these exams, correct? So you have to have some gauge and some barometer of people's knowledge base. So you can't publish books that are going to have the test questions in them. So the test prep books are designed to prep you, get you mentally prepped for what could potentially be the order of how things are on the test, and give you a feel of what sitting in the actual test thing would be like, because it's talking about this amount of questions or this amount of scenarios and things like that. Kaylin says, I have a couple of reasons why I want to get into this. I watched my mom go downhill in a hospital that did not care and or just wasn't educated enough. And I want to be that person that maybe that I can catch codes. That's right. And that's a wonderful thing to use as your motivation, because there is a lot of medical bill bankruptcy in the world. I mean, in the US, when you think about it. And the thing that I think of is, what if those bills and those procedures were errors? What if they were the wrong codes that were selected because they weren't properly looked at? Or maybe the coder just submitted what somebody else had selected. And so that's the thing. If they're not technically trained, if they're not really looking at it, if they're not paying attention, those things, you just never know. And so that's the thing. It takes people who are dedicated to making a difference, getting into this field, number one. And you can't just get into it because I want to collect a check and go home. There's so many people out there like that. And the thing that I tell people is, would you want somebody with that same attitude billing your encounters for when you get sick and you have to go to the hospital and you have to go have a surgery? I can't tell you how many times I've looked at my own EOBs that come in. No. And I'll call, excuse me, I know this was not a level 4 visit. Oh, okay, well, we'll look at it again. And sure enough. So you can question, like, okay, what's going on here? Because people don't know. And if they don't know, they're not going to question, oh, doctors are expensive, so of course it's going to be all this much. No. If you're looking at your bill to make sure that you got all these services that were provided to you, that's where you have to have that technical knowledge to be able to understand all that stuff. So that's why I always say, whenever I look at an encounter, I think about how I would want for somebody to look at my encounter, and with some care and with some detail, so that it doesn't get this crazy stuff, There are wrong and educate providers, and I also wanted to be into a field that constantly challenges my mind. That is very true. This is a challenge, because learning it when you're learning from ground zero, because I had no experience coming in and I learned from a computer. It was a program. And so that was all I had to learn on. So it is possible to learn it from books and from online programs and things like that. But but being a person who actually cares and getting into it is so huge, you know. But it is going to be a personal decision whether you decide to go through a school or go the independent study route. If I had to do it over again, I'd probably do the independent study route myself, because it's just like, okay, if I'm gonna go through a program that I maybe have to pay out of pocket for, which I didn't have to. I went through the WIOA program, which, you know, that was a wonderful blessing in itself, because it gave me this career, right? But if you don't have the ability to be able to get that, and you're having to pay out of pocket, you know, people are telling me all the time, well, I have to take a loan and I have to do this, or I use my savings. You know, that's a huge hit if you have to absorb that hit and you didn't get all of the education that you should have gotten. So that's why I say, just do your research. And people will ask me all the time, they'll send me emails, well, what do you know about this school or that school? I didn't go through there. Well, what can you tell me? Can you call the school? Call the school. And it's not to be mean, but like literally, I can't say anything about any school because I haven't been there. If I had personally experienced that school, then that would be completely different, right? Then I could say, speaking from experience, what do I say all the time about Optum 360? I love their books because I have experience looking at their books. But when it comes to an actual school and this school or that school, I don't know. I didn't go there. Ask the school. You can ask the school, because if you're going to have to pay them all that money, oh yeah, they better be answering some questions. And if they don't want to answer questions, then you know that's not the school that you want to go to. Ask them about how the curriculum is set up. Ask them if they have questions, how often do the instructors get back to their students? How long does it take? I have heard from people who went through a particular online school that said that it takes the instructor a month to get back to their one question. But they did get told that they had instructor feedback back and forth. But it took you a month, really? To answer one question? Okay. Kayla says, I agree with that because I went through a local college and I felt like I didn't get the education that I should have. And now I'm studying better on my own through the school. And see, you know, sometimes that's all it takes. So, you know, unfortunately, sometimes that's an experience that we have to learn when we go, because we don't know, right? I mean, we don't know until we're actually there. And sometimes it just may be the instructor. And if the instructor is, and with instructors, you know, there's different reasons why they get into being a teacher versus actually being out there and being a coder. And, you know, not all instructors are created equally. Some instructors are wonderful and are touching so many lives just being an instructor. And then you have some that are, you know, not really pushing the critical thinking, or perhaps they're pronouncing the words wrong. Like it's one thing when you mispronounce a word here or two, but if it's like a basic word and the instructor can't even pronounce a basic human anatomy word, oh no. Yes, we all struggle, but there's some things that you know that there's a particular pronunciation of it, and you can look on YouTube. YouTube has tons of videos on how to pronounce medical terminology. Do I sometimes mispronounce words? All the time. But when I hear, okay, that's not the way you say it, Blue. Okay. What was that word? I said andipose instead of adipose, which is like fatty, you know. But I was saying andipose. PA that I was working with, he goes, you know, it's adipose. I go, it's adipose. Because I was like, oh, oops, you know, I was just adding an end in there, you know, an end, you know, it was just like, whatever, you know. But I learned after that, and now I say adipose. But when you're reading all day long, sometimes your eyes just kind of get crossed, and you're just like, okay, fine, you know, but you start learning how to pronounce these words. And that's like a telltale sign, even though it's just something that's small. But if you're mispronouncing a word, then what else is going on, right? You need to have good vocabulary, very good speech, because that is going to trickle down to your students, right? When you are teaching students, they have to be able to pronounce these words. They got to be able to go in front of these providers and not have that mispronunciation, and they're saying it too, right? So that is something that is a detail, but details mean so much, especially in our industry. So again, whether you decide to go with self-study or go with the school, it's going to be entirely up to you. How fast, how quickly, especially if you're going the independent study route, I recommend taking your time. If you don't understand something, reach out and find a mentor. If you are a member of the association already, there's a lot of people that are interested in becoming mentors all the time. If you are on LinkedIn, and I'm on LinkedIn, Medical Coding with Blue, there's tons of mentors on LinkedIn, and they are always happy to help. I've seen so many brand new medical coders out there, and they say, well, I'm looking for a mentor. And there's so many volunteers that are willing to donate their time and say, oh, okay, I'll help you. I'll give you a hand, whatever. And there's also tutors out there. There's tons of tutors on LinkedIn. I'm a tutor myself. I will leave the rates for my tutoring in the description box below, but they're very reasonable. So it's sometimes you just need somebody to explain something, and then it'll click, because it's not always when you read will it always make sense. So that is something that to think about when you are getting into studying on your own. And even if you are in school and you still struggle and your teacher is not responding to you, it's time to be proactive. Don't just feel defeated because your instructor is not helping you. Would it make me mad because I spent a lot of money for a teacher who's not helping me? Of course. But once that money is spent, it's spent. There's nothing that you can do about it other than to get through and get as much from that program as you possibly can, but be proactive in your approach to, okay, I got to figure this stuff out. Since you're not helping me, I got to find other ways to get help, because I'm not going to sit here on the sidelines and just take that I didn't get a good deal with this school, because then you're hurting yourself, because then you're really going to lose money, because then you're going to be so frustrated, like, I don't want to do this, and so you have to get back in there. And again, think about your why. Think about why you're doing it. Are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for your kids, your spouse, your family? That is something else to think about too. Think about those things when you feel those moments of, can I do this? Do I even want to do this? This is so confusing. I'm tired of this. I don't want to see these big books anymore. And some people will say, I'm tired of big books, Blue. I love books. I don't see a problem with books, but there are some people that I don't like books. I want to use the encoder. The encoder will come in time when you are in the real world. But when you are in school, you have to use that book, because that book is what is going to be allowing you to take this certification exam, right? Because you have to use your books. Never lose your speed. Never lose your familiarity with the book, so that way you don't get slow when you're looking up stuff in the book. It doesn't frazzle you when you go to take your certification exam, because you will have been through your book so many times that you'll know it like the back of your hand. There's so many times when I can literally open the book to exactly where I need to. And I don't tab my books. That's another thing. It's a personal choice. But some people love tabbing. I don't. I came up in a time where you don't tab your books. There's different rules about that now. With the HEMA, it's like if the tabs came with the book, then it's okay. And before I get anybody who argues with me, it is literally on the website in the candidate handbook that the tabs have to have come with the book. They cannot be homemade. And AAPC, they love to tab their books. So it is entirely up to you, but I learned with no tabs, because tabs got in my way. But yeah, it takes time, especially if you're studying on your own. It's like working out. It's one day at a time, one step at a time. That's what it's going to take. So when you are studying on your own, don't get discouraged at the first feeling of discouragement that you get, where you feel like, oh, I'm not motivated. Sometimes that happens if you're pushing yourself too hard. You have to remember to give yourself breaks. Don't study 7 days a week, okay? Give yourself breaks. Spend time with your loved ones. So that way you don't spend so much time away from them, because then if you do, then for sure you're going to give it up, because you're spending too much time away from them, and maybe they're complaining that you're spending too much time away. But if you still give them time, there's going to be a little bit of that back and forth. And a lot of times with kids, people say, well, Blue, I'm doing this for my kids. And, okay, great. Your kids would be happy to help you too. They can hold flashcards. And the side benefit is they learn as well. So, something to think about there, Hi, Maisa. So that is something that I would recommend, if it comes too much for your kids, okay, well, let's incorporate this then. Then you can help me. And so either one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to help you or they're going to go off and do their own thing. So, and then you get what you want, which is time to study. So there's always ways of incorporating extra study time. If you are working, you can read the guidelines to yourself and record yourself reading them and then listen to them on your way to work, or listen to a really good podcast. The only podcast that I recommend is the Medical Coding Geek podcast. That is my pal Brian Quee's channel, and I will have to remember to leave his link in the description box below. And if you haven't had a chance to already, he has a wonderful YouTube channel, the Medical Coding Geek channel, with lots of really good videos as well. And he has been in the industry a really long time. He does CDI, clinical documentation improvement, or clinical documentation integrity, depending on where you are in the US. People say it differently, but he is a wonderful coder. And so that is something that you can look into. Podcasts are great. I don't have a podcast just yet, but that is something, I don't know. I may in the future. I don't know. But there's times that you can incorporate those things. If you're at work, you got a 15-minute break. Well, you can print off the guidelines and read them. Read them while you're there. And again, you don't have to memorize them. You don't have to even understand them. You just have to read them. Because trust me, that little investment is going to go a long way. Caitlin says, I've been studying 3 days and I relaxed on 2 days and then listened to the guideline videos on the weekend when I work. There you go. Carlene says, hi, Blue. I just received my books today for self-study for CPC. Yay! That's wonderful. I'm so excited for you. Get on that schedule. When you are on self-study, get on the schedule. And that's the best way to hold yourself accountable for your time. For spending this much time, and you're going to get through this many chapters. You're going to take it a chapter at a time, and you're going to go from there. And even if you don't understand something when you're getting through those sections, it's okay. It's okay to get past that section, come back to it at a different time as a refresher. And you could say, well, I need to review the reimbursement because I didn't really understand it the first time I went through it. And you would be surprised at how much things make sense when you look at it later again. And you look at it with these fresh eyes, and you get more confidence as you get through your program because you've made it. And every time you make it, every time you pass a milestone, give yourself a pat on the back, because you have to think about how you have decided to do this and you're sticking with it. And it's something that you are devoting the time to do. So whenever you do that, give yourself a pat on the back and let yourself know that that's okay. Because you are going to need to be your own motivational support sometimes, because you're not always going to get it from the people that are around you. I'm sad to say, when I was in school, there was a lot of ladies who did not have that familial support when they were going through the program, because their family didn't believe in them. There was ladies that literally would come in and say, oh yeah, my mom says that she doesn't think I can do it, or my husband says he doesn't know why I'm doing it. He doesn't think I can do it. Ooh, that was like so hurtful. I was like, why would anybody discourage an adult who's chosen to go back to school? But people have their different motives and they have their different reasons. You have to be strong enough to say, I'm going to do this, and this is what's going to happen. Because you have to start building that now. When you get in the real world, you have to be just as alpha as those other providers, because you're going to come up with alpha personalities all the time. And it's not just the providers, it's going to be the other coders as well. So you don't want to get into that thing of, that you're going to let people run over you, because you can't. Not in this field. And even if you're shy, I'm a shy person right here. But if you are a shy person, it's okay. You can build those skills to be stronger. And that's another thing that this field affords is personal growth. That's what I like too, is because you have to learn to be able to speak to providers. You have to be able to argue and defend yourself and your codes. And then you have to be able to be willing to accept the fact that you were wrong. If you were legitimately wrong, but if you were legitimately right, you have to be able to articulate that argument very well so that somebody who doesn't want you to be right can say, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Because I've had to do that. I've had to argue my way back several times with people. And it's just like, no, you're wrong, you're wrong. And then I will show them the guideline, here it is, or I'll show them the Merck manual, here it is. Oh, darn it. Yeah. So you have to come with your knowledge base. You have to be able to defend yourself. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. It will come with time. It's just like everything else. The goal is to get you through your program, your self-study, or going through an instructor-led school and getting into the real world and getting that job. That's the goal. So, but yes, yeah, so that's my advice. You know, if you're going to go the self-study route, you got to be disciplined. If you're going to go, you know, the school route because you need financial aid, you know, you're going to get what you get when it comes to your instructor. But you got to make sure that you ask those questions before. And if it doesn't work out, that's totally fine. Pick yourself up and keep going. Get as much as you can out of that program because you paid for it. Get as much out of it as you can. So that way you can get into the field. You can get into becoming a medical coder like you want to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up because it's almost an hour. If anybody else has anything else to say, I think I've been doing a lot of the talking tonight. But yeah. So let's see. I have a couple of other shows to do this week. I'm going to do one about how to study, and I'm going to show you guys in the book that I have, one of my old books, so that way you guys can just get a demonstration real quick. What? I see somebody commented. How long does it take to review CPC when you have an RHIT? I don't know. I don't know your knowledge base. I do know that with RHIT, I mean, that's a little bit more of the coding. So with the CPC, you know, the CPC exam is multiple choice. When you get the study prep books, if you can gauge your knowledge that way and see if you struggle or with or whatever, they have a whole outline of the test on their website. And so that's something that, you know, you can look at. That would be what I recommend. But it is multiple choice. And if you've been studying with the RHIT program, I mean, they do a little bit more coding with that than they do with the RHIA program. Emma says, I went to a local community college for my medical coding technical diploma, and my teachers were good, but it was still a lot of self-motivation and advocating for myself. Yeah. Good luck to all the exam takers. Yeah. Edie says, I have no coding experience and I feel I may be wasting time. Hard to get in with no experience. And you have your degree, Edie? I just got my A removed. Yay, Caitlin! I passed my CCS certification and I'm working on getting a coding job. That's wonderful, Emma. That is really wonderful. Do y'all hear that? It's a thunder. It has been raining all day, all day long. It's funny because a couple of days ago when I was filming and it was raining outside, I literally had to stop filming because like it was like boom, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I jumped and I was like, darn it. Will you be doing a video about some of the reimbursement things? Reimbursement in terms of what? Like insurance, or like what specifically about reimbursement? Yes. Oh, you got a lot of education, ED. So when it comes to finding your first job, it's going to depend on a couple of things. How your resume is written, okay, and how your cover letter is written, and are you applying everywhere? When they see a degree, sometimes it causes employers to do one of two things. Either they get really excited, this person wants to be in a managerial type position or a leadership position, because typically RHITs are supervisors, they are the data quality people, sometimes they are the auditors, sometimes they are like leads, or they are like the provider educators. So sometimes that's what they're thinking when they see an RHIT. Sometimes when they'll hire you with no certification, like a CCA or CCS or CPC, they'll hire you that way. But sometimes they want you to have that certification because the concentration of those degree programs is not specifically coding. And so for some employers, they say, well, we need you to have a certification. Any supplies I should get before I start my first semester of coding? You can get flashcards. You can get the plain deck ones from the index cards, right? From the Dollar Tree or the dollar store. Get you some nice little markers and things like that. You can do that. Get you some folders, lots of pens, lots of pencils, so that way you can, notepads, excuse me, so you have lots of things to take notes with. Like DRGs and MSDRGs. Oh, I'm learning about that right now. I'm in an online coding program right now through HC Pro. It's for the CDI program, and I'm learning about that. I learned about that also with their inpatient coding boot camp, which before anybody asked me about inpatient coding boot camps, if you are going to go through any kind of boot camp for medical coding, just know that you have to have some kind of background already in coding, and whatever the boot camp is, you have to have some kind of background. Otherwise, when you go to these things, you'll be completely lost. I do like HC Pro and their program and their approach to teaching. I think it's great. I have learned a lot. I will have to put something together, Caitlin. I think, Caitlin, aren't you on Patreon? Aren't you on Patreon with me? Hi, NC. Because I typically will do something more like that on Patreon. It's a little bit more difficult to do that here on YouTube. But because I think maybe I go too long. Maybe that's what it is. And I think that because like Brian Quee, the amazing Brian Quee, medical coding geek, Brian Quee, he's like, just do like little tiny bits of like tips. So I think maybe I'll do that, because maybe that might be a little bit better for some people, because I think sometimes it's too technical. And like nobody watches. And so I'm like, I want to put out something, but I want people to watch. You know what I mean? Especially when you put time and energy into it. That's why I do a lot of that stuff on Patreon. But I am going to try to do it here. And I will make a mental note of that, about the DRGs and the MSDRGs, because that's going to help me as well. Because I think when you are learning something and you're able to teach it back, that's another thing too. Now I got a second wind. So when you are learning something, and if you have the ability to be able to teach it back to somebody else, whether it's another student or whether it's just the mirror and you're teaching yourself back, hey, that's still a good thing anyway. So do that. If you're learning something and you're trying to teach it, you're trying to learn it, teach it back. So that's a good idea. And I think I'm going to do that for MSDRGs and DRGs. Maybe I'll do it in little bits, because I think it'll help me to retain it better, because I've been on the outpatient side. Like outpatient's been my coding home for many years, and now I'm learning about the inpatient side. So very good idea. So I like that, Caitlin, and I will definitely take that into consideration. I will bring it here to YouTube. I will definitely have it on Patreon, because that is a good idea. You just gave me a good idea. Brainstorm. Yay! So yes. So I think that's it. Unless anybody else has anything else to say this evening. But one more thing for ED. So when you are apply everywhere. Make sure that your resume looks good. Make sure your cover letter looks good. Be very clear in why you want the position. Apply everywhere, even if they're asking you to have experience. And that's my advice for anybody. Because a lot of times in areas coders are already going to be, with experience, are already going to be working. Unless they are out looking for a job, they're going to have a job already. So sometimes employers are so desperate that they will take brand new medical coders, but they need to know that you're available by you putting yourself in front of them, and know that you're going to take a lot of rejection. And that is another thing too, that sometimes it's hard, especially when you're getting rejected a lot. And I don't know how long you have been applying for jobs. Some people, they apply for a month and they already feel defeated because they can't get a job anywhere. But you have a degree in hand, and a couple of them at that. So quite a few. So, sometimes all of that education can be intimidating as well. I'm just saying, and especially if you're applying for these jobs, like these entry-level coding jobs, they may think that you're overqualified. So you need to make sure that your resume reflects your abilities, but you don't want to intimidate people either. If it is specifically about medical coding, then of course you want to talk about that. But you want to make sure that you're being very clear about what your wants are, especially when you're trying to get into this field. So at least that's my advice. I hope you're still listening. But that's my advice. And I say apply all the time. There's lots of places that new medical coders can apply to that don't require experience. And a lot of times they don't even require certification. Prior authorizations, medical billing, risk adjustment. Those are the top 3 that I always recommend. Because when you're looking at those job postings, they're not asking for certifications a lot of times. And if they are, they're asking for a HEMA or AAPC credentials. So, that's something to think about. And you already have the RHIT, so, that is something that you can certainly apply for. Okay. Emma says, thank you, Blue. Thank you. Do you think it is good to start applying before getting certified? Sometimes they will accept you, especially if they know you're going to get your certification within 6 months. Sometimes they'll put a deadline on it. They'll say, if you've completed a program and you are going to be taking your certification within 6 months, then they're okay with hiring you. Just know that you're probably not going to start on that pay scale as high as somebody who has a certification. So that is something to think about. That's sometimes employers will do that. I've seen them do that. And they'll say, well, we gave them a chance to get started with us and we're training them. So that's how they're looking at it. And they know that it's difficult for brand new medical coders to get a job. So sometimes people are willing to accept those things. So that's something that you should know right out of the gate. Yes, I have seen employers say that that's okay. If you're going through a program, you're going to take your test within 6 months, they're fine with it. And if you can knock your socks off when you're doing the interview process, then more power to you. So, it really all depends on the employer. But yeah, that's something that you can do certainly before you finish your certification. It's totally fine. All right, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate all the feedback and thank you all for the good conversation. And I will see y'all on the next video. Bye.